All right, we'll be starting in about a minute's time. So while we're still waiting for everyone else to come in and settle down, let's take a few deep breaths. Inhale slowly and exhale slowly. Inhale, take a deep breath. Hold it for a little while and exhale. And as you exhale, feel your whole body relax. Inhale slowly and deeply. Hold your breath, bring your awareness to your shoulders and to your back. And as you exhale, relax your shoulders, relax your back. Just feel relaxation passing through your body. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And as you exhale, relax your full body and visualize that you're floating out of your body, about 11 to 12 inches above your head. Inhale, I am that I am. I am not the body. The body is just the vehicle of the soul. Visualize your body dissolving away into nothingness. Inhale slowly and deeply once more. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. Exhale. The emotions and thoughts are the products of the soul. The carpenter is not the furniture. Visualize your astral body dissolving away. Inhale again slowly and deeply. I am not even the mind. The mind is a subtle instrument of the soul. Now, as you exhale, visualize your mental body also dissolving away. I am the soul. I am that I am. Let your consciousness expand. Be aware of your body. Be aware of the room you're in. Be aware of your environment. And now be aware of the brilliant light from God surrounding you. You are not a physical creature, nor an emotional one, nor a mental one. You are a spiritual being. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. I am connected to my higher soul. Inhale, exhale. I am one with my higher soul. Inhale. Feel the white light pervading through your entire system. Exhale. I am that I am. I am one with the divine spark within me. Inhale again and feel brilliant light rushing in, being one with you. Make a note of the color of this light. Take note of this light that surrounds you. I am a child of God. I am connected to God. I am one with God. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, visualize that you're floating high, high, high above the earth. You can see the entirety of planet Earth. And as you look around, you can see more light, more colors popping in around you, surrounded by this brilliant light. Make note of the colors, but be detached from it. I am that I am. I am one with God. I am one with all. Now look around, and as you see the white light, the brilliant light that connects you, connects everybody else, Spiritually, there is only oneness. Physically, there is only the illusion of separation. I am that I am. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chua Kok Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Meiling, to all the great, great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher soul, to my divine self, to the angels of theosophy, to the angels of love and wisdom, of understanding and intellect, of compassion and love. Thank you all for your priceless blessings of divine light, divine love, divine power, divine healing, divine guidance, divine protection, for abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather together as a group and to understand thought forms, to understand theosophy, to understand ourselves better, that we may become better divine servants for helping humanity, for healing Mother Earth, every person, every being on Mother Earth. We thank you in full faith. Thank you. Thank you. Take a deep breath. And as you exhale, move your fingers, move your toes, wriggle them around. Straighten your back, stretch, open your eyes with a big smile. Good day, good evening, or whatever time it is in your part of the world. Thank you, all of you, for joining in. Atma Namaste. My name is Orko, and since it is absolutely difficult to pronounce, you can call me ADB or Eddie, as the people in Starbucks do, because they just massacre my name. Maybe I should create a positive thought form of people being able to pronounce my name correctly. So today, in today's session, we'll be talking more and more about the thought forms in particular, their shapes, their colors, their textures, and revising a little bit from last time. So very quickly, if you can see my screen, hopefully properly, we'll just go a little bit into the various parts of the thought forms. That thoughts are things, the effects of thought, the meanings of the colors, general principles, simple illustrations, and so on. So till last time, we covered up till meaning of colors, but I will still go through it a little quickly so that we can catch up, all be on the same page. So thoughts are things, and very few of us have any idea of what thoughts actually are. And the objective of this book is to help us understand what they are. There are impressions which are produced. So this particular slide talks about the contributions of various people like Chladni and Dr. Baraduk, who contributed to understanding thought forms and the psychic impression that it produces and how you can read them. Okay, so they took the concept that thoughts are not just thoughts, but they have a tangible effect, a tangible presence in the physical world. And they made these shapes and other colors and patterns. Okay, so we covered a little bit about Tesla, about the experiments on sand, about the forms which are produced by sound on these sound plates. Okay, and it talks a little bit about how this book, Man, Visible and Invisible, has practical experiences of thought forms interacting with people, having tangible, visible effects. Okay, and it talks about man, the thinker, who is us basically, and how we are clothed in a body which has the physical substance, it has an etheric substance, it has an astral or emotional substance, and a mental substance. And all of these things, they occupy space and they have an interactivity with each other. So when we have an emotion, okay, when we have an emotional response to someone or to something, it has an impact in our aura. So our aura acquires the form or that color of emotion we are experiencing. So sometimes people say, we hope you're in the pink of health. Turns out pink has an actual tangible color. Or someone with a lot of intellectual thoughts tend to have a golden kind of aura, right? These are shown in paintings or diagrams, in churches or other religious places, in religious books, and we can read more about it. Okay, so the physical body, under the impulse of various thoughts, various emotions, they radiate colors and pulsing colors and shapes which we can read. Okay, now the astral body is the one that really gives a charge to the thought form. Okay, the mind simply conceives of a thought, but it's the astral charge, the mental charge, that gives it proper form. And as we go forward, we will study how these forms take shape, how they act, and the effect it has on all of us. Okay, now there are two effects of thought. Okay, The first one is every time there is a thought, there is a definite thought, it has two effects. First, it creates a radiation or a vibration. And second, it creates a floating form. So if I say the word love to you, okay, if I say the word love, chances are you might think of a person or a place which evokes a positive sentiment for you. So you create a radiation in your aura with a floating form around it, with a name or place of a person you love. And if I say, work from home, working from home, you tend to develop a thought around you, a vibration around you, which may or may not be stressful. I think 99 out of 100 people find working from home a little stressful. 100 out of 100 people find working at work a little stressful. It's just statistics. Don't quote me on it. Okay. These radiations, they form in the aura and they radiate outwards. Now, when a clairvoyant person sees a thought form, when they're trying to tune in, they will first see that the vibration is occurring around the person in the mental body. And this vibration could be a simple kind of vibration or a complex kind of vibration, depending upon the kind of thought. Now, if I ask you, think of kittens, okay? Small, fuzzy, beautiful kittens, all right? Playing about, you're probably smiling a little bit. Now, obviously, since I cannot see any of your screens, I have no idea whether you're smiling or not. So I'm only assuming that you are smiling and sending positive thought forms out. This is a subtle way of asking you that if you can switch on your screen, please do so, because it makes it more interactive. Right. The mental body has several degrees of matter. All right. Thank you for the screens coming on. Yay. The mental body has various degrees of density. So you've got, in the physical world, you've got 7 layers, okay? Solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and then the etheric layers, and then you've got the astral layers and the mental layers, so on and so forth. So as these forms of matter, they start vibrating more and more, we can say that the thought form is something which is dense or not dense. So depending on how dense the thought form is, it can manifest, it can materialize, okay? If it's not that dense, well, probably needs more work. But we'll not go into so much on the aspects of manifestation and materialization, because that's for a separate book altogether. But right now, we're just dealing with the mechanics of it. So the majority of human thoughts are not simple, okay? You have multiple thoughts going around and around you. Now, absolutely pure thoughts, of course, exist, but that is only for people who know how to think, who have taught themselves how to think. And that's a phrase which you'll find in this book, Thoughtforms, quite often. This book written by C.W. Leadbeater from the Theosophical Society, he very frequently talks about those who have trained themselves how to think. Okay, what does this mean? In my understanding, many people, most people, their minds do not follow a linear chain of thought. At this point in time, you are focusing on this particular presentation, this demonstration. You are aware simultaneously of the words on the screen, of the sound of the voice. You're also aware of your immediate environment. Like if you're sitting down, you're aware of your back, which is touching your sofa or your chair or your bed. You're aware of the sounds around you. If someone were to call your name, or if your phone were to ring, your mind also devotes energy to that. So very simply put, the mind cannot operate, or for most people does not operate on a linear one-on-one basis. It is aware of multiple things simultaneously. The one-pointedness of thought is training. It is what we call in the Yoga Sutras as dharana. So you've got dhyana or dhyan or zen, which means an expansion of consciousness and a prolonged awareness. And you've got dharana, which is concentration or one-pointedness. So when you have one-pointedness, that is a way of training your mind how to think. So you need to have expansive awareness as well as one-pointed focus. All of these things together, when the mind is trained, which the Arhatic Yoga system does in a very beautiful fashion, is what trains a person to become a proper thinker. So those are the technicalities which, of what goes into thought forms. We then went into one of the more interesting parts where we spent a lot of time talking about the colors of thoughts. So this particular slide should be familiar to you, where we went through this entire section on the slab of light colors and the gradations here on and here forth onto the dark colors. Now, today we'll be going a little more into detail on all of these, okay, where you've got the left side and the right side where they correspond to from spirituality to devotion and affection, all the way down to sympathy, ordinary kind of love, jealousy, and so forth, and straight down into anger, hatred, selfishness, and outright malice. So in the book, let's take a little deeper look into the meanings of the various colors. Now, before I go into any depth, are there any questions so far? No? Okay, great. Let's proceed. So the meaning of the colors over here, in the bottommost row, it says red. Red, of all the shades from this strong brick red to brilliant scarlet, indicates anger. So we're basically looking over here. Okay, brutal anger will show as flashes of lurid red from dark brown clouds. So when a person is very angry, the anger tends to be quite explosive. All right, a person is not like angry standing there saying, "I am angry. Don't mess with me. Go away." No, that's not anger. That's a robot. Okay, anger is a person maybe sitting there and then like a spring, boom, they explode. You will have noticed, or in your experience, people when they get angry, they tend to shout a lot, right? They tend to shout a lot, or they tend to bang objects, okay, making loud sounds. This explosive outburst of energy shows up in the thought forms as dark red with dark brown clouds. Okay, so to a clairvoyant person, when they look at a person who is very prone to anger or violence, their aura will appear to be muddy red. Okay, why muddy? Because brown in this case is the color of mud. So red and muddy. For the pranic healers, for the arhatic yogis, especially those who've done advanced pranic healing and psychotherapy, you can correlate certain protocols with certain colors. Where there's a certain patient who has a certain very cancerous kind of condition and there's certain colors in the aura, which is mentioned in the protocols, you can correlate this knowledge as to, okay, if I've got a patient who has a lot of anger, well, this is the kind of color which I can expect that will be there in their aura. So therefore, this patient should avoid foods which also have a very high red prana content. So you see the knowledge of thought forms, the knowledge of these colors and prana, of course, corresponding with foods can help us become better healers and have a very practical correlation into our lives. Okay. Point number 3, the anger of noble indignation. It's a vivid scarlet. Okay. It's not unbeautiful, although it has an unpleasant feeling. Now, these are words from the book itself, and the book is more than 100 years old. So the language could be pretty archaic or pretty lawyerly in certain parts. I mean, the word unbeautiful, not heard that in a long time. Okay. So noble indignation, what is noble indignation? Noble indignation, I can give you an example over here in my country. Because of the lockdown for many, many months, the electric company could not come and take records of how much electricity we've consumed. So for 2 or 3 months, they didn't charge us a very high amount, okay? Maybe 5% of what it usually comes. In this month, for many, many, many households, they've suddenly charged 300 to 400%. Okay, so some people who used to pay, maybe, I'm just giving an example over here, who used to pay something like $200 for an entire year, they have been billed $300 for 1 month. So those people are angry. Okay, how dare they bill us like this? How on earth could they do that? It's a noble kind of indignation. They have been wronged. So anger also has many levels. If you attended the talk by Mr. Sriram from the Oneness Project in the IIS seminars, okay, he talked about angers and the various causes of anger. So you're not getting your way, or you've been wronged or upset. Maybe it's an emotional cause or a psychological cause. Noble indignation in the context of thought forms is when a person has anger, rightful anger, towards something which has wronged them. So a noble person, when they're angry, it's not unbeautiful, as the word so nicely says, because they're helping other people. Obviously, they're going to go to the electric company and prevent the overcharge. But at the same time, it's unpleasant because anger is not pretty. I mean, the only time anger looks good is if you're maybe a kitten. Now, a particularly dark and unpleasant red, almost exactly the color called dragon's blood, shows animal passion and sensual desire of various kinds. Now, never having seen a dragon myself with my own eyes, and especially never seen a dragon's blood, I can only assume that the color they've depicted over there is the exact color of dragon's blood. Okay. If you have any dragons, or if you know any dragons, well, good luck, because that's probably going to be a very interesting experience. Now, the reason why they talk about this particular shade, because it shows animalistic passion. What does it mean? Now, passion, we use this word passion many, many times. The word passion comes from the Latin word passeo, okay, which means to suffer for a cause you believe in. Now, there are many interpretations of it. One of the interpretations which I read is that it comes from the word passeo, which means to suffer for a cause you believe in. So if a person is very passionate about their football team, okay, for example, they're very passionate about their football team, they will stay up late at night waiting for the matches to happen, no matter which part of the world they're in. Okay, they're going to go out and buy their merchandise and support their teams. Okay, of course, it's not very healthy physically because they're staying up late on and on. They're spending a lot of money, but it's a passion. It's a little bit of suffering for a cause that they believe in. Now, that's a small example of a game. You have people who are passionate about so many things. There are people who are like, I want to talk about something that's deeply important to me, food. There are people who are passionate about food. They're going to go to great lengths to procure the most exotic ingredients, and they're going to spend hours and hours perfecting their recipes, reading recipe books or watching videos on YouTube, right? And I can see some of you are nodding your heads. Good for you. I'm very happy to know that we are all in the same passionate genre. Okay, so you have people who love feeding other people. You've got these home bakers. I know the lockdown made chefs and bakers out of a lot of people. Me, I just put on weight. Okay, so this passion, you can take it to personal things as well as broader things. You can think of it in terms of politics. Okay, there are people who are passionate about their religion. There are people who are passionate about their political affiliations, and they will not stop, they will not hesitate to hurt other people for their beliefs. Okay, which is why if you look in this particular slide, you have malice, okay, on the right hand side, because this animalistic passion, it can go from righteous anger to straight out, I don't care, hurt you. That's a mob mentality. You have a group, you have a mob of people. It's usually a small number, maybe 5 or 6 people who are inciting the mob. The other people just get upset. They just get riled up. I'm sure if you've seen this on the news, or maybe unfortunately you may have experienced it yourselves, it's a very unpleasant scenario, but it happens because a few small people, they are constantly radiating this thought form, which is, unpleasant red with animalistic passion and all sorts of negative desires. And other people are caught up in the maelstrom, in the storm of all of this, and they react accordingly. All right. Now, sensual desire of various kinds, a little bit more elaboration on that, again from last class. When we usually hear the word sensual desire or sensuality, we take it to mean something sexual, right? Something extremely physical. Whereas the word sensual, the root word is in senses. So you have the visual senses, the auditory senses, the olfactory senses, the gastro senses, and all the touch senses, of course, which are there. So someone who is addicted to watching movies, all right, always chilling out with a very familiar streaming app, they could be having sensual desires because they don't do anything productive. There are people who are addicted to eating. There are people who just want to listen to music and chill out all day. So these are also examples of sensuality and sensual desire of various kinds, because they are not doing anything productive and simply lying about, engaging and feeding their senses. Okay, that's what we mean by sensual desire. Now, the last one, clear brown, almost burnt sienna. So if any of you who have an artistic background, especially those watercolors or pastel colors, brown sienna is like a reddish kind of brown color, right? It's a couple of shades away from black and a few shades away from red. So it's clear color though. This burnt sienna color shows avarice, okay, or greed. It's a hard, dull brown, gray kind of color. It's a sign of selfishness. And according to the author, it's unfortunately a color which is extremely, extremely common. All right. Now, going a little bit into psychology, there is the concept of I, me, and mine. That's what makes a person selfish. This is me. These are my things, right? And this is what I own. And you can expand that into, say, not mine. So this is mine, that is not mine. You might have seen this in young babies, like really small babies. You hold up a toy in front of them, ha, 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 they go and get it, and then they see something else, ha, 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 they forget this and they go immediately for that one again. So what's mine is mine, what's yours is mine. If it's fallen on the floor, it's mine. If you're eating it, it's mine. So this tendency to take is what we call the selfishness or avaricious. Okay, and this tendency, of course, as an adult, it shows up in the form of constantly trying to generate money, constantly chasing after things, a bigger car, a better house, the latest phone, really expensive watches, take at the cost of health, relationships, and other factors. So these are the red colors which we talked about. Now, moving forward from there, the spotlight now goes into something gray. A deep, heavy gray, which is what you see on the right-hand side, signifies depression, while a livid, pale kind of gray is associated with fear. So fear and depression usually tend to go hand in hand, because a person who is quite anxious about the future, about their health, relationships, finances, they tend to become depressive, right? So it could be fear. As Master Choa Kok Sui says, fear is an absolute necessity. You need fear to survive. So if a tiger were to attack you and you were unafraid, well, then you've just achieved oneness with your higher soul. The tiger has liberated you from your body. Okay. Well, I hope you've achieved oneness with your higher soul. Depends on your level of purification, of course. But the tiger has been an instrument in liberating you. So that's real fear. And Master Choa says there is fear based on imagination. What is fear on imagination? Does she like me? Will he give me a loan? Will he go into business with me? Will my product perform well? How will my children do in the exams? Okay, so these are fears. There's a story of a guy who needed a hammer. Have you heard this story? This guy, he needed a hammer, but he didn't have it. So he decided that he's going to go to his neighbor's house and ask him for a hammer. Now, it's a little bit of a walk. So as he was going from his home to the neighbor's home, he started thinking, what if he doesn't give me a hammer? What if he thinks that his hammer is too good and I might lose it? And if I do any damage to it? What if he's a really stuck up guy? What if he doesn't help me? What if he doesn't help anybody? Okay. So based on his imaginary thoughts, he went up to the neighbor's house, knocked on the door. The neighbor opens the door. You can keep your bloody hammer. And he walks off. And the neighbor's like, what? Because this guy, he spent so much time imagining scenarios that he forgot to ask his neighbor for a hammer. Pardon my language, I tend to get a little passionate. Okay. So he went off to the neighbor, and that's how he behaved. So it's fear based on imagination, which causes people to behave in unrealistic manners. Okay. Gray green, which is somewhere over here in the central part, is a sign of deceit. Okay. Why green? Because green is a color of flexibility. And deceit, when a person has fear as well as flexibility, they can be a little deceitful. You know, this tendency of telling white lies or small fibbing, these things. When mingled with selfishness, okay, green means adaptability, but when mingled with selfishness, this adaptability becomes deceit. While gray is a sign of deceit itself, and brownish green, now remember brownish green, which we talk about, avarice or greed. It's usually also has shades of red. It symbolizes jealousy. So jealousy is when you don't want other people to have what you have. Envy is when you want what other people have. Jealousy is when you want to prevent other people from having what you have. Okay, so not wanting other people to succeed, not wanting them to be as successful as you. Such a person would have a gray-green kind of aura with flashes of red, scarlet, and brown. Okay. Now, when the color becomes purer, it means that they want that all things for everybody to be nice. Now, it could simply be for the sake of becoming popular and having a good reputation. Some people, they do a lot of charity, they do a lot of work, and you've probably seen this. They go for a charity drive, and they donate food to 50 people and they put up 100 selfies, right? You've probably seen this, okay? They're helping people. The desire, the goodwill, and the will to do good is there, but it's also got a tremendous will for, look at me, I'm helping out people, I'm important, that kind of thing. So even though the color is purer, it is still not pure, because it has a lot of selfishness, which is connected to it, right? Now, when it becomes higher, when this green color, the vibration raises higher, it becomes more delicate and more luminous, and then it is called sympathy. Now, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is when you see a person and you understand the pain that they're going through. You can understand that the difficulties they're going through. Empathy is when you feel that pain. For example, in my country, there are many poor people. They will stop at the traffic signals, they'll come up to the car, they'll knock on the car, they'll give a balloon or a chewing gum or a piece of chocolate, whatever, and they say, please give us some money. Now, out of sympathy, they said, okay, you don't have any food, I'm going to give you 10 bucks. And you give them some money and you're done. Empathy, on the other hand, is, oh, this child or this human being is suffering from lack of food, from lack of shelter. Their clothing is also torn and tattered. I stop the car, or the person stops the car, they take the child to a restaurant or to a place and they organize a meal for them. A much higher form of empathy is when they organize, say, a food for hungry program or a foundation for feeding the hungry, that the not just one meal, but this entire family for days and days and days, they are fed, so they don't have to worry about food. So sympathy is when it's a small fleeting thing. It's for some amount of time, while empathy is emphasized. That's the way at least I like to remember it. Sympathy is for some time. Empathy emphasizes and helps more and more people. And the color over there shows that in a higher, more delicate form, the divine color, so the green color, shows up. Okay. Now, the focus becomes a little pink and it goes on to affection. Now, affection expresses itself. I love how they use the language here that affection has to express itself. Anger and the other things, they are there, but affection needs to be expressed. Okay. It expresses itself in all shades of crimson and rose, a full clear color. The clear color means a strong, healthy affection of the normal type. Now, they mention normal type because, of course, there are also abnormal forms of affection. You know, someone becomes obsessive or, stalker kind of behavior. If the color of affection has a lot of brown and gray, then it's a selfish and grasping kind of feeling. Okay, they don't just want to be affectionate, they want to own the person. Have you met any people who seem to want to monopolize your time all the time? Okay, as a pranic healer, as a counselor, maybe even just in your place of work, or maybe you have some relatives. You go to a party, they're sitting here, hey, how are you? Oh, you look so good. Look at me. My problem this, my problem that. Hey, don't go away. Why are you running away? Come back, come back, come back. You've met people like this, okay? Before pranic healing, maybe some of us were people like that. Who knows? Okay? So this color, this clear crimson color, it can become stained with brown and gray, and it's a grasping kind of feeling. Now, in some of the slides, they show the thought forms. We'll go into that in some time. The pure pale rose shows the absolute unselfish love, which is only possible for people with a high nature. Okay, people who are really refined, those who have not only taught themselves how to think, but how to feel, how to emote, how to serve humanity. So then you've got this like pure pale rose kind of color. So this color gradation, it passes from the dull crimson color of animalistic love, passionate love, to very delicate shades. And it's very poetic language, like the early flushes of dawn, as the love becomes purified from selfish elements and flows out in wider and wider circles of generous, impersonal tendencies and compassion to all who are in need. Let's make it simple. Let's make it simple. You raise your hearts at the chest level. Imagine pink light going out, healing the earth. Simple, right? Much simpler. Okay. So, when we read this, taking a little detour, I just get amazed at the brilliance of Master Choa Kok Sui. How did he take all of these things, all of these concepts and said, okay, simplified, bless. Radiating pink light, radiating golden light. Okay. Even as basic and advanced pranic healers, at that level, we are taught some of the colors which have an impact. It blows my mind at the teacher's brilliance. Okay, and why he made this recommended reading. So moving on from there, from the pinkish and expressive shades, it now goes into blue and golden colors. With a touch of blue, blue shows devotion. This expresses a realization of the universal connectedness of humanity. Okay, now let's take a pause over here. If you remember at the start of the sessions when we were, I'm not the body, I'm not the emotions, remember when we are floating up, 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 and I asked you to make a note of any colors that you see? What colors did you see? If you remember what you saw, please put in the chat box. Let's see if we can correlate. So according to the text, the blue here expresses a strong realization and connectedness that the whole world is interconnected. Okay. Deep orange shows pride or ambition. Okay, deep orange shows pride or ambition, and the various shades of yellow denote intellect or intellectual gratification. And it's very important here, they have differentiated between intellect and intellectual gratification. Why is this? See, intellect is when a person, they already have intelligence and they like to produce results. They like to talk about tangible things which produce results. Whereas you have intellectual gratification, where these people, their discussions are not geared towards any solution. They just like to feel smart at the end of it. They like to feel, oh, I have talked about so many things, so many points. I'm pretty smart. I'm a smart guy, right? At confession mode, I definitely had this and still do to a large extent. And I've got to thank the wonderful people at Prana World for kind of putting up with me for all these years with that particular tendency, that we have these impotent thoughts, these constant need for seeing, look at me, look how smart I am, look how intelligent I am. All of this shows intellectual gratification and not just actual intellect. So as you can well imagine, these are only some of the colors which the authors have denoted. There could well be, and there possibly are, multiple shades, tints, and hues which are covered in between. Because if there's a difference between intellect and intellectual gratification, who knows what other kind of layers and sublayers there can be in between. Makes sense, right? Now, dull yellow ochre actually implies the direction of the intellectual faculty to selfish purposes. So someone has a lot of brains, but they're using it only for the purpose of profit. They're not using it to help humanity or to help solve the problems of Mother Earth. So that becomes a selfish kind of nature. Clear, Gamboge, Jamboji, I really don't know how to pronounce this word because even Google failed me. I'm just assuming it's a clear yellow color, which shows a distinctly higher type of intellect. Okay, if you know how to pronounce this, thank you. I would be really grateful to know how to pronounce this word. Gambogi? I don't know, just sounds so funny. Now, okay, I'm getting texts which are saying that you saw a kind of bluish color, a pinkish color, a blue color. So that's fantastic because the blue here shows the interconnectedness and the pink here shows the love and affection, which is what happens. The pale, luminous primrose yellow is a sign of the highest and most unselfish use of intellectual power. Okay, this is the kind of reason which is directed to spiritual ends. This is the kind of person who says, okay, there's a problem. Let me give you an example. In one of the old videos of Master Chua, or was it an interview? I don't exactly remember. Someone asked Master Chua, how did you come up with all of these solutions? How do you come up with basic and advanced and psychotherapy and arhatic yoga, the spiritual workshops, you know, the legal aid program, the food for the hungry, all of these things? How did you come up with it? So Master Chua thought for some time and he says, well, I asked myself, what does humanity need? What does humanity need? And he created a solution. So the thought forms or the colors in the person's aura who is devoting their intellect for purely spiritual purposes, for helping other people purely, they would have this pale, luminous, primrose yellow color in their aura. This is why many saints, when I say saints, I mean people who are really intellectually developed in churches or stained glass and frescoes. If any of you who are with an architectural background, you'll be able to share examples much better of artwork where there's a predominance of yellow in the paintings of people. Okay, so this is this pale luminous yellow color which they talk about. And finally, we go on to the blues. Okay, not the music, definitely not Monday, but the different shades of blue here all indicate religious feelings, and they range from all the hues and shades, starting from the dark brownish blue of selfish devotion, which is what we got over here on this side, the pale grayish blue of fetish worship tinged with fear. Okay, let's talk a little bit about those two in some detail and then go on to the other ones. The dark brown blue of selfish devotion is when people say, okay, I believe in God, only my God, and your God doesn't exist. My God is the best God. I am devoted to God. So it's a form of love and devotion, sure, but it's extremely focused and exclusive. It excludes all the other possibilities. They're stuck on only one. So that is the brownish blue of selfish devotion. So there's blue, but there's also a lot of that brown, that burnt sienna color in it. Gray blue, when they talk about fetish worship, it's like people, they start worshiping images or idols. Okay, they look at the finger and not what the finger is pointing at, to quote Master Chua. Okay, they are so focused on, okay, it's like this. Have you seen some people who, suppose there's a football match on TV, or any kind of sport, all right, their team makes a goal and they say, oh, I was drinking water from this angle, so now I'm going to hold my cup at this angle and my team will score a goal again. Okay, they have that kind of bizarre devotion kind of thing. So on this date, I will not go out at all because it'll rain, or I will not sign a deal on this particular day because of XYZ reason. They have this fanatical kind of approach towards religion or spirituality, which is more fear oriented. Like, it's not, they're not doing things for the love of God. They're doing things because they're afraid of God. They're afraid of retribution. They're afraid of vengeance. They're not God loving, they're God fearing. And there's a difference in that. And of course, their thought forms show that color, from rich blue to good blues to the brownish blues and the grayish blues, right? From there, you have the rich, deep, clear color of heartfelt adoration. Heartfelt adoration, you have someone who you really look up to, someone who is very kind, who's very gentle, never loses their temper, very nurturing with their thoughts, their words, and their actions. And you have a lot of pure love for them. Okay, that is a rich, deep, clear color of heartfelt adoration. And from there, you've got the pale azure blue of the highest form, which implies self-renunciation and union with the divine. Now, the pale azure blue, if you look at the color, it's almost violet. Okay, what we know as violet. So again, it should be no surprise to us, to the pranic healing fraternity, to the Arhatic yogis. I'm assuming everyone here is a pranic healer, at least to the advanced levels. So the color violet should be very interesting and important to you, because it shows that there is self-renunciation, that I am not the body or the emotions or the thoughts. I am the soul. I am that I am. So the violet color over here, this pale azure blue, what they're calling, implies union with the divine. While the devotional thought of an unselfish heart, it's just lovely in color. It's like the deep blue of a summer sky. Now, of course, the people who wrote this, they were from England and they came to India for some time. So the skies could be blue at some point. Depending on your country, the color may vary of the color of sky. But for the most part, if you have a blue colored aura, it shows a devotional, unselfish, higher ideal. Okay. So that takes care of the meaning of the colors. Okay. Let's now move on. Okay. Any questions on this so far before we move on to the fourth segment? No? No questions? Okay, fantastic. So let's go on to the general principles. Now, in general, there are three principles that cover all thought forms. Principle one is that the quality of the thought determines the color. Okay, so if you look over here, we just spoke of blue. Okay, so quality of the thought determines the color. So from this, just looking at the shape, at the color itself, we can say that it denotes a very spiritual kind of thought. Okay, the quality of thought is spiritual. The nature of the thought determines its form. So the thing about thought forms is that when you have a very clear thought, a very clear idea, the form becomes more defined. Otherwise, it's just amorphous, like clouds, like cotton candy. Okay. So the first one, if you see, it's vague, it's rotating around, it's not yet defined. But the quality of the thought is a spiritual kind of one. So it's blue. Now, the nature of the thought, suppose they want to do good, they want to help other people, the form becomes a little more defined. You can see that it has distinct striations, it has an inner layer, an outer layer, and so forth. And the definitiveness of the thought determines the clarity of the outline. So, what does the definitiveness or the definition of the thought mean? That they are going to go and do it. So, it's like quality of thought, I should go and I should do some charity. It's like this, I should do some charity. So the color is blue and it swirls up in the aura. The nature of the thought determines the form. Okay, maybe I should feed some people. Not just charity, I should feed some people. And finally, I will feed 100 people every month. I will donate to MCK's Food for the Hungry, X amount every month. I will go out and feed the hungry. So it ranges from something which is vague to something which has a little more structure, and finally to something which is absolutely definite. So you've got it over here. The quality of the thought determines the color, the nature of the thought determines the form, and the definitiveness of the thought determines the clarity of the outline. So the clearer a thought is in your space, the clearer a thought is in your mind, the higher are your chances of manifesting. So the first 2 points, the quality and nature, that's kind of goodwill. And the last one, which is the definitiveness, that's the will to do good. So the first two is when you have an idea, you have a concept, I need to do this, I will do that. And the last one is I go ahead and actually do it. Now, in more texts of thought forms, it's like energies attract. So as a thought form travels across, as it moves across, it attracts other thought forms of a similar nature, of a similar vibrational quality. So if you send out a thought of, okay, feeding the hungry, I will be feeding the hungry, you will be attracting the thought forms of other people who want to feed the hungry, and they will be drawn to you. So chances are very, very high that if you went to a spiritual workshop, you found a lot of like-minded people because all of you have the similar quality of thought forms. If you went to a feeding program and all of them were motivated by the will to do good, not by the will of taking selfies or charitable selfies, then you'd have made good friends with them because you have a similar kind of purpose. So that's the definitiveness of the thought, which determines the clarity of the outline. So it's not just important, it's not just there that you have a thought, you've got to spend time with the thought, you've got to determine the plan of action. So it's not just what you want to do, it's where you want to be. So it doesn't matter, again, as Master Chua says, it doesn't matter where you are right now. What matters is where you want to be. Determine where you want to be and how you're going to get there. That's what the teaching says. So this is what gives you the quality, the nature, and finally, the definitiveness. So when you have a definitive thought, you know what to do and the way to do it. So from the point of view of these thought forms, quality, nature, and clarity, you got certain thought forms which take the image of the thinker. So if I'm thinking of something, it takes the image. Second, it takes the image of some material object. Okay. So for any of you who are looking at that ice cream sundae, in case you've manifested it in the next, by the time we have the next session, we'll know that your thought forms are super, super powerful. Okay. And lastly, that which takes a form entirely of its own. So first, a thought form which takes the image of the thinker. The second, which takes the image of some object, a material object. And third, it's a form of its own. So in the first one, the thing which takes the image of the thinker, it's like when a person thinks of himself in a distant place. So for example, I'm here, I would like to be vacationing somewhere in the mountains, and I really want to be there in the mountains. Then I create a thought form of me in the mountains. Okay, that's pretty much the mechanics of it. Sometimes such a form has been seen by others, okay, because this person, the thinker, has thought of him being there so strongly that it has actually taken astral matter and it has formed an apparition. So this is one of the examples of how ghosts are seen, right? You think of a friend, someone's thinking of a departed one so much that they created an image of that departed friend, and it's right there. It's not real because it's that person is not alive or not there, but it's real in the sense that an actual thought form became matter. Okay. In such a case, in a case where it has been observed, the person who is seeing it, who's observing it, they must have a sufficient amount of clairvoyance for that particular time to be able to observe that astral shape. Okay. So the person who is seeing it, they also need to be clairvoyant at that time and have that amount of clairvoyance at that time. Now, these phrases are pretty interesting because it implies that clairvoyance is not something that's on 24/7, and the quality and quantity of clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is there, but it must be sufficient and at that point in time. It's not that clairvoyance is like a tap that you can switch on and it starts flowing. Okay. So only person with that kind of clairvoyance at that particular time will be able to observe that astral shape. So for all you know, there are thought forms which are of course surrounding us all the time, but our clairvoyance is not sufficiently strong, or it's not really necessary for us to see all the thought forms which are surrounding us. We'd just be overwhelmed if we could see thought forms around us all the time, which is what happens to certain people who's who are really drug addicted or psychologically greatly disturbed because the critical filter has gone off and they can't differentiate between reality and thought forms. Now, the thought form also, there's a second part to it. It must have sufficient strength to materialize itself. What does this mean? The thought form should be able to draw in elements of astral matter to clothe itself in astral matter and a certain amount of physical matter. So from my country, there are stories of the epics, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and many, many other stories of these great beings, these greatly evolved beings who could materialize objects. They would just think, they'd put their hand out, and boom, the object would appear. Could be anything from gold to food to clothes to whatever. So basically, they had that kind of mental power. They knew how to think. They created the thought form. That thought form was created in astral matter and physical matter and gifted to whoever needed it. And after it served its purpose, it would vanish. Right? So these stories, these epics, they're basically codexes or hidden messages on how the human system can operate. Now, the thought which generates a thought form such as this, which can, a manifestable thought form, it has to be a very strong one. It has to be very strong. Okay. And therefore, it must employ a large proportion of energy from the mental body so that the form, even though the form is small and compressed when it leaves the thinker, as it travels through space and time, it draws upon a substantial amount of astral matter. And by the time it reaches the destination, it has expanded to life size. So what does this mean? So here's a thinker, and they've let out a thought form which is small in size. And here is the recipient. Now, as the thought form travels through space and time, it becomes bigger and bigger until it reaches the recipient at life size. So the form must be extremely, extremely, extremely clear. This might seem abstract to you, but let's give it a physical reality. Okay. Are you living in a house which you like? Maybe a place of work which you've done up? Chances are that was simply a concept in your head some years back or some months back. Okay. If you're at home in the lockdown, you're working and you've renovated and you've redesigned your space, it was nothing but a concept in your head until that concept grew and grew and grew and grew and acquired sufficient mass, astral mass and physical mass and matter until it manifested in a physical reality for yourself. If you've written on your target board or in your wishes that I would like to have a certain amount of money, and you've written that figure, and you're constantly looking at that figure and you're thinking about it with a lot of positivity, and finally that has materialized, it is because that thought form has gone out, has expanded, and attracted similar energies around itself until it has physically manifested. Right? So the fact that you're living in a house of your own design, that you visualize something and you're living in that reality, it is nothing but a very simple example that thought forms become real, that thoughts become things. Interesting, right? Now, so that's the first part, which takes upon the image of the sender and the receiver. The second part is which takes upon the image of some kind of material object. So if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of my friend, or, well, I'll probably not be thinking of my friend, I'll be thinking about food. So I'd have the thought form of food floating about in my aura, okay, moving around. And it's usually passes outwards and usually floats suspended. So the same way, if I think of a house or a room or the place in the mountains that I want to go to, tiny images of these things are formed within the mental body and then externalized. Now, if I think more and more about it, it becomes stronger and bigger. If I stop thinking about it, it just vanishes. Okay. Now, this is equally true when a person is exercising his imagination in the case of painters, artists, or even writers. Because a painter, an artist, will visualize a scene in his mind, and he, using the matter of his mental body, he projects it onto physicality. So this particular paragraph is really interesting because it shows how imagination becomes physical reality. You take an idea of your mind, you clothe it in mental matter with an emotion, and then becomes physical matter projected onto a two-dimensional space. Similarly, a writer imagines his character, okay, in a certain way, and then the story starts writing itself. Have you heard of this small book called Harry Potter? Yeah. J.K. Rowling, the author, she said that she was traveling in a train. I think she was traveling in a train, and Harry walked into her head fully formed. So it was a thought form. It's a very good example of a thought form which created its own life. Now, as you know, the Harry Potter franchise is worth billions. And so many people of us connect because of this similarity to, this affinity for this world, this wizarding world of Harry Potter. All right. So many beautiful stories and friendships which have been formed on the basis of this. So it's an example of a story writing itself because the thought form took on sufficient mental and astral matter and then wrote its own story. Okay. That's the positive side. The negative side is when someone creates a thought form and the thought form becomes more powerful than the creator. Okay, there are some beautiful horror stories of this. If we ever talk about some of the Kriya Shakti related stories, stories of Tibet and other things, maybe someday if we talk about hermetics and other things, there's some fascinating stories of what not to do. I think I just made a very good case for not reading these books at all. Okay, so what not to do? No, that shouldn't be a workshop. Now, when our concepts of reality, because we are used to a physical, tangible space, not so much to abstract ideas and abstract thoughts. Okay, because we are not confident of the reality that we create, someone who is more developed, they can take the thought forms, manipulate it, and create something better for us. Conversely, someone with a bad desire can also take our thought forms, manipulate it, and create something negative. Okay, so we have to be very objective, we have to be very clear, we have to protect our thoughts, and that's why again the phrase teaching oneself how to think comes in. Okay, so you have to have clarity in your thoughts, which is for your own safety. And now the third and most interesting part, those thought forms which take a form entirely of their own. So we spoke about the nature of the thought, the clarity of the thought, and the three thought forms: one, which takes upon the shape of the thinker; two, which takes upon the shape of a physical object; and third, which takes upon a shape of itself, a form of itself. Now, only thought forms of this class can be illustrated, because the first and second, we'll just be drawing portraits or landscapes, right? Because if I think of a thought form of me, then you just have a picture of me. You think of a thought form of the teacher, you have a picture of the teacher. You think of a place to go to, you have picture of the place to go to. But if it's a thought form which takes upon a shape of itself, something like love or devotion or anger or whatever, okay, these can be illustrated. In these kind of thought forms, you have this mental and astral matter, which is plastic, which means it can be molded into the physical plane, okay, and you can actually see them. So this very fact, which makes them so interesting, also places a barrier on their representation, because they inevitably manifest themselves on the astral plane, which is very feeling oriented. So the thought might not be so clear, therefore the form is also a little unclear. But if you have clarity of thought, then instead of it being vacuous and vapid and like cotton candy, it becomes very clearly defined. So in this next few slides, here are some examples of the beautiful thought forms created by those who know how to meditate and those who have learned how to think of those thought forms. So they've sat down and they've meditated upon a certain thought, on a certain idea, and these images were clairvoyantly observed and they were reproduced for us. Okay, so here are a couple of more other points that these thought forms they can do. When they're directed towards an individual, they produce definite marked effects, and these effects are either partially reproduced in the aura of the recipient, or they increase the total, or they're repelled by it. What does this mean? That if I'm here and I'm thinking of a person who I like very much, and we have a shared interest, okay, and I send her my thoughts, similar thoughts, so my thought form will go to her and be magnified and be enhanced. So if we have a similar spiritual project going on, and if you think about it, then chances are our collaboration will be enhanced more and more and more. But if this person, suppose someone else whom we don't like each other, and we are sending each other negative thoughts, then it's going to not only go there, but it's also going to hit it and bounce back. Okay, so a thought of love, desire, and to protect directed towards a beloved person creates a form which goes to the person you've been thinking of and remains in their aura as a shield, as a protecting agent. Okay, it'll seek all opportunities to serve and all opportunities to defend. Now, it's not doing this consciously or by an action, but it's simply because while the thought form was created, the impulse was created to serve and to protect, and therefore it will go and strengthen all the friendly forces which hurt the aura, and if there are any unfriendly forces, it will weaken it. So when we sit and we say, I will send blessings to you, if you're part of a healing group or a meditating group, and you say blessings be to you, to one person, and you send with that appropriate emotional charge, an actual blessing goes out, a thought form goes out, which serves, helps, and protects. Of course, it doesn't make sense if you're like, okay, I'm blessing, blessing, blessing. What time is it? Okay. No, of course, it doesn't work that way. You've got to be more focused. So when you have clarity and focus and you send the energy out, that thought form which goes to the person's aura, to the receiver's aura, that thought form helps them. Again, if I go back to the Harry Potter example, because I find a lot of similarities and examples, Harry's mother, if you're familiar with the books, Harry's mother, Lily, before she died, okay, if you've not read the book, spoiler alert, Harry's parents die. So Harry's mother, before dying, she created a thought form of love and protection. And Harry was protected by this magic. So basically, a very powerful thought form was created, and it went and protected her son. Okay. So therefore, we may create guardian angels, actual guardian angels around those we love. And many parents' prayer, a mother's prayer for a distant child, circles around him. Even though she doesn't know how her prayer is answered, it is answered because she's created a thought, charged up with emotion, sent it there, and it goes and protects. Okay? If you love somebody, if you have loved somebody, and you look at them and you think of them, and you send them that pure love, they will reciprocate, they will respond. This is, by the way, the principle on which the prayer of forgiveness works. So all of a sudden, if you suddenly remember a person who you haven't spoken to in a long time, or you haven't interacted with them, suddenly you feel like messaging them or getting in touch with them, maybe they were doing the prayer of forgiveness with you or for you, and those thought forms of love and affection and softness worked on you, and you felt the need to reach out. Likewise, if you do forgiveness with people whom you don't like, you will be neutralizing a lot of the negativity that exists between you two. So here's a very solid example of how the prayer of forgiveness works, with just a thought form as an example. Interesting, right? Yeah, okay. Now, in the cases where there are good thoughts or evil thoughts which are projected at individuals, okay, they must have an object which they can rest upon. Let's just make it simple. If the person you're sending love to has love in their system, then the love thought form will find it easier to work with. On the other hand, if you're sending hate to a person who is very loving, that thought form is just going to bounce back. Okay, so therefore there's this phrase, my righteousness is my shield, which means if you have wholesome thoughts, wholesome emotions, wholesome actions, then you will only attract similar good things. There is a recommended reading, a series called Astara, the books of Astara, where they have this prayer on the white light, the Asterian affirmation. And over there, there's a beautiful phrase that says, I am in the beautiful white light of God, of the Christ. Nothing but good can come to me. Nothing but good shall go from me. Or only good can come to me. Only good shall go from me. Again, it's a question of thought forms and related energies. Okay. any combination of matter can only work within certain limits. If the thought form is outside those limits that aura is capable of vibrating, then the thought form cannot affect that aura at all. Okay, which is why for some people who are really, really full of sadness and anger and negativity, you might need to keep blessing them over and over and over and over again, because their aura is so full of sadness that it doesn't have anything to appreciate or absorb the quality of forgiveness or love. So you've got to keep sending, saturating them with love, 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 until that negativity can start to appreciate some love, and then it starts to grow. All right. So by the study of thought forms itself, we kind of get an insight into the virtues of constancy and one-pointedness, of aim and effort. At the same time, to be moderate, because you can't say, hey, you, I am sending you love. You had better be loved. Are you feeling loving now? No? How about now? You can't force love. Okay, you got to be gentle about it. So, what happens if you send a thought form to a person who doesn't have the same energy as you? Okay, suppose a person sends a very negative thought form to a good person. So what happens is the energy goes and it just bounces straight back. That's why it's said that those with a pure heart and mind have the best protections against any form of psychic attack or psychic assault, because a pure heart and mind will construct an astral and mental body of such fine and subtle materials that these bodies cannot respond to vibrations which are gross. So as you purify yourself, the matter, your physical, etheric, astral, mental matter, from gross and heavy becomes subtle, light. From rocks, it becomes sand, to just give an example. So if an evil thought projected with a lot of malice, it strikes such a refined body, it'll only rebound from it. And it is flung back not only with its own energy, kind of like a badminton or a tennis shot. You send it with a certain speed, it goes back at the same speed. But as it's coming back, it also starts attracting all the other negative thought forms around it, and it hits the sender. So a bad person sends a negative thought to a good person with the power of X. It bounces back, starts attracting all the negative, and hits the sender back with 7X, 21X, 100X. Okay? So therefore, the phrase that curses and blessings come home to roost. So what's the safest thing that you can do for keeping yourself psychically protected? Say good things, think good thoughts, be good. In YouTube parlance, they call it BNBR. Be nice, be respectful. BNBR. Be nice, be respectful. Now, from this, it also there's also an effect that if there's a good person, and this good person has sent out good thoughts, then goes and has a more subtle and penetrating effect. It's good for those who send good thoughts. It's bad for those who send bad thoughts. Okay, that's the summary of it. And with that, we have pretty much covered all the technical aspects of the thought forms. What's left are the simple illustrations of these thought forms and certain thoughts which are more complex, which act in a group setting. So we are almost at the close of the session. So if I can take maybe 5 minutes and walk you through some of the simple illustrations, is that okay? Yeah, okay. So this one you probably remember from the last time where we showed about vague pure affection. You know, it's like cotton candy floating about, nothing very definite. And then we saw an example of vague selfish affection, and we correlated the two with those two thoughts. Okay, you got the nice pure color, but the outline is not defined. So you remember the nature of the thought, the definitiveness of the thought, the clarity of the thought. So this is vague. This is also vague. And then the book goes into more detail where it says vague pure affection is a revolving cloud of pure affection. And except for the vagueness, it's a very good feeling. And the person from whom this vague thought form emanates is a happy person who's peaceful with the world, probably thinking of some friend or something which gives him peace and pleasure. There's nothing keen or strong about this feeling. It's just one of gentle well-being and general happiness or delight in the proximity of those who are loved. You know, it's like you're there, you're enjoying life is good, you're chilled out, okay? Parents are happy, siblings are happy, spouse and partners are happy, okay? No spouse, no partners, no children, happy because of that. It's just a general kind of feeling. Okay, hey, you know, props to single people too, right? Why should all the married people or the couples have all the fun? Those are thought forms too. Now, the feeling which gives birth to producing such a cloud is pure, but there is no force in it. There's no power in it. So it doesn't produce a result. Okay. It's just that happy, happy, that kind of thing. An appearance like this frequently surrounds a gently purring cat, okay, or a kitten, and it radiates slowly outwards from the cat in a series of gradually enlarging concentric shells of a rosy cloud at a distance of a few feet from their drowsy creator. So next time you see a cat video on YouTube or Facebook or wherever it is that you find your cat videos from, well, there's a reason why it's pink. Okay, a lot of cat videos are seen on Instagram, and Instagram is very pink. I do not know if it's correlated, but just wanted to put it out there. And then oh, you have a cat. What color? Pink? Now, this time, it's a tricolored cat. Ooh, nice. In the next session or on the group, please share a picture of the cat and we shall all send it thought forms of love and happiness. Okay. I have dogs, but I still like cats. Now, in this one, this particular picture, this time the color is deeply tinted with a dull, hard brown gray of selfishness, which shows itself inside the love. So you've got pink outside and dark brown, dull brown inside. And we can see that the affection is connected with satisfaction at favors which they've already got. And they have an anticipation of more favors to come. It's the kind of person who goes, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, 1 for the master, sir, 1 for the dame, sir, 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane, sir. Okay, if you've studied nursery rhymes. So these are the kind of thought forms which a person who has love and affection but is very selfish. Sir, you've retired, sir, goodbye, sir. Are new, sir, hi, sir, happy, sir, or ma'am, whatever. Okay, these are selfish examples. Now, while the previous one was figure 8 and this is figure 9. I've put the figure numbers over there. So if you've got the book, you can correlate with the pictures and page numbers. So in figure 8, which is the previous one, it was indefinite. At least it was free from selfishness. And therefore it showed that the person with such a nature had a certain nobility of character. Figure 9, which is this vague selfish affection, it takes the place of that nobility and lowers it. So it's not possible, according to the author, it's not possible that a person can have both vague pure affection and vague selfish affection in the same lifetime. Now here, I personally like to think that yes, it's possible that you can feel, because as human beings, we're evolving. There's been a lot of spiritual growth and changes in 100 years. And so a person is capable of being dichotomous. They can have this paradox in themselves. But according to this particular book, in the same incarnation, it's not possible to be pure and selfish simultaneously. But you decide for yourself, you judge for yourself. But still, even so, there's a redemptive quality, there's a redeeming quality, because there is good in the man who generates this kind of a cloud, even though they're still partially evolved. And so a vast amount of the average population of the planet generates thought forms like this. It shows that they have good in them and they will still continue to evolve, right? From there, it goes on to definite affection. Now, there's something very effective and capable in this, because the shape in the previous ones, if you look, it's vague and amorphous, all right, floating about. Whereas in the third one, figure 10, definite affection, this will produce a result. Now, the color is absolutely clear. It has depth and transparency, and there is an intention coupled with action. It's got layers in it. If you see, it's got one layer, a second layer, and a third layer inside, because this is a thought form of intense affection, and it looks like there's motion, okay? Like it's been ejected. It has been ejected towards the object of the feeling. So this figure number 10, it depicts the thought form after it has left the astral body of the creator, of the author, and it's on its way towards the goal. So this almost circular form has in it, because the thought form is circular, okay, it's become projectile, like pointed, and it's going towards the object. It's kind of like a comet, the way they've described it. And the clarity of the color assures us of the purity of the emotion. Now, clarity is something that the authors keep mentioning, because only when something is pure can it have clarity. So the clarity of it, the strength of it, the size of it determines how soon the thought form manifests. So the size is a factor and the clarity is a factor. The bigger the size, but if it's unclear, it's vague, it doesn't materialize. But if it's very clear, it'll materialize faster. But if it's very clear but very, very small, then you have a seed of an idea. So it needs to go out of the system, become really big, really, really strong. And only then with a big size and a definite shape will the thought form manifest faster. Now it says that the person who birthed such a thought form must already have a certain amount of development. So chances are pretty high, and it's just my guess, that when we are blessing a person with healing, with health, with protection, we're probably generating these kind of thought forms which are going straight towards our subjects. So that's one more. Now there are a few more which are there, but due to lack of time, since we've already touched upon today's session, and we should have something for the next session, that's something we'll touch upon for the next week. Okay, and chances are we've probably already going to cover it at that time. So, okay, there's a question here. Can a person heal lack of clarity of thoughts and emotions? If yes, then exactly what should I heal? Inner noise. Okay, can you heal lack of clarity of thoughts and emotions? Can you heal lack of clarity of thoughts and emotions? Yes and no. I would think yes and no. Why? Because if there's a lack clarity of thought, then you don't know what is unclear. So what might be more effective is to do inner reflection. Yeah, instead of just trying to heal away, because we're working with the mind. Okay, it's no longer at the etheric and energy level. We've gone on to the astral and mental levels, and as the book says, those who have trained themselves how to think. So how do you think? You use your, okay, let's find out. So inner reflection will probably be a more effective tool in this than something else. All right. So yes, let's conclude for today. If there are any further questions, happy to take them now. Otherwise, we'll keep it for next time. All right, no questions coming through. So thank you everybody for joining in. Let's have a closing invocation. Let's straighten our spines. Create a thought form of love towards the teacher, towards Master Chua Kok Sui, towards Prana World for facilitating this session, to the Supreme God, the first creator, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, to all the spiritual teachers, holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher self, to my divine nature. Thank you for your priceless blessings of light, love, and power, of healing, guidance, and protection, of abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. We thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather together as a group, to learn and understand more, to have clarity of thoughts, to have clarity of mind, to have balanced emotions, to become clean, clear, pure channels of healing. We thank you in full faith. May God bless Master Chua Kok Sui. May God bless Pranic Healing and Arhatic Yoga. May God bless Theosophy. May God bless Prana World and all those connected to Prana World directly and indirectly with love, light, and power, with healing, inner healing and physical healing, health, guidance, and protection, with abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. May they spread the light. May more and more people be guided towards anchoring the light and spreading the light. With thanks, be aware of your heart, project the love, and in full faith, so be it. So be it. So be it. Thank you everyone for joining in. Please do leave some reviews and some comments on our social media channels that we can attract more and more students into these workshops and hopefully help them evolve and also help us do our work. Thank you everybody. If there are more questions, I'm happy to answer them in the WhatsApp group for everyone's benefit because the chat will disappear. Would clarity of thoughts attract the same quality? Yes, it would. That's a short answer. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next Saturday. Take care. Goodbye.